They thought I was just another trophy wife who'd cry into designer tissues when he left me for that young blonde. But while everyone watched the divorce drama unfold in the headlines, nobody saw what I was really doing behind the scenes. I held the real power all along. Before we dive into this incredible story of betrayal, secrets, and ultimate triumph, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this plays out. Now let me tell you what really happened. You know, people love to make assumptions. They see a successful black woman married to a white billionaire, and they think they know the whole story. Trophy wife, gold digger, lucky girl who hit the jackpot. That's what they whispered at every charity gala, every business dinner, every social event we attended together. My name is Gabrielle, and for 12 years, I let them think exactly what they wanted to think. Because sometimes, the best weapon you have is being underestimated. When I met Thomas Whitmore at a Stanford business conference, I was already successful in my own right. I had my MBA from Wharton. I was running my own consulting firm, and I had a portfolio that would make most people comfortable for life. But Thomas, he was playing in a different league entirely. Billions, not millions. And he was charming, intelligent, and seemingly different from every other wealthy man I'd met. What I didn't know then was that Thomas collected things: art, cars, watches, and eventually, wives. I was wife number 2, though I thought I was his one true love. Isn't it funny how we can be so smart in business, but so blind in love? For 12 years, I played the part perfectly. The supportive wife who smiled at his side during interviews. The gracious hostess who threw dinner parties for his business associates. The woman who nodded thoughtfully when he explained his deals to me, as if I was learning something new, instead of analyzing every word for what it really meant. Because here's the thing nobody knew. I wasn't just listening to be supportive. I was listening because I understood exactly what he was doing, and some of it made my stomach turn. Thomas built his empire on real estate, tech investments, and what he called strategic partnerships. What he didn't call them was money laundering operations, tax evasion schemes, and deals with people who made their money through very questionable means. I saw the paperwork he left lying around. I met the men who came to our house for business dinners. I heard the phone calls he thought I wasn't paying attention to, and I documented everything. Not because I was planning to leave him, understand. At that point, I genuinely loved him and thought maybe I could help him transition to more legitimate business practices. I kept records because I'm a businesswoman, and businesswomen protect themselves, always. Then came Isabella, 24 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes, and a laugh that could charm the paint off walls. She was his new executive assistant, fresh out of college with a degree in communications and absolutely no business experience. But Thomas wasn't hiring her for her business acumen. I knew about Isabella before he thought I did. I always know about these things before he thinks I do. The late nights at the office, the sudden business trips, the way he started looking at his phone with that little smile, the same smile he used to give me. But this time was different. This wasn't just an affair. This was Thomas planning his exit strategy from our marriage. He'd done his research on divorce settlements, talked to his lawyers about prenups, and started moving money around in ways he thought I wouldn't notice. He thought he was so clever. Move the assets offshore, claim the businesses were worth less than they actually were, paint me as the bitter wife who was trying to take him for everything he was worth. He'd done it to wife number 1, and he figured he'd do it to me too. The morning he asked for the divorce, he had that same smug confidence he wore in every business meeting. We were sitting in our kitchen, this beautiful marble and steel masterpiece that I'd designed myself, and he slid the papers across the counter like he was presenting a business proposal. "I think it's time we both moved on," he said, not even looking me in the eye. "Isabella and I want to start fresh. And I think you deserve to find someone who can give you the attention you need, the attention I need." As if I was some needy housewife who'd been neglected instead of a woman who'd been building her own empire while he was busy building his. I looked at those papers, and I smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months. "Of course, Thomas," I said. "I want you to be happy." He looked surprised. He'd been expecting tears, drama, begging maybe. Instead, I was calm, reasonable, almost relieved. It threw him off completely. "I'll have my lawyer look these over," I continued. "But I'm sure we can work something out that's fair for everyone." Fair, if he only knew what fair was going to look like. The next 6 months were the most challenging and exhilarating of my life, while Thomas and Isabella were busy planning their new life together. And believe me, the society pages couldn't get enough of their story. I was busy putting together the real story. See, Thomas made one crucial mistake. He assumed I was like wife number one. He assumed I'd been sitting around for 12 years, just enjoying the lifestyle, not paying attention, not building anything of my own. He assumed I was financially dependent on him and would take whatever settlement he offered just to avoid a messy public divorce. But I wasn't wife number one. I was Gabrielle, and I'd been busy. While he was building his questionable empire, I was building a legitimate one. Every charity I chaired, I turned into a networking opportunity. Every business dinner where I was supposed to just look pretty and stay quiet, I was actually building relationships with his competitors, his suppliers, his investors. Every time he left important documents lying around, I wasn't just cleaning up after him. I was photographing everything. And that consulting firm I'd put on pause when we got married, I never actually closed it. I just ran it differently, quietly, strategically. By the time our divorce proceedings started, I had a complete picture of Thomas's real business dealings, the offshore accounts, the shell companies, the partnerships with people who were under investigation by multiple federal agencies. I had dates, amounts, names, and most importantly, I had proof. But I didn't lead with that. Oh no, that would have been amateur hour. Instead, I played the part everyone expected. I hired a lawyer who specialized in protecting women in difficult divorces. I gave a few carefully crafted interviews where I talked about how hard it was to discover your husband's betrayal, how I just wanted to move on with dignity. I even shed a few tears at exactly the right moments. Meanwhile, my real legal team, the one Thomas didn't know about, was building a case that would change everything. The breakthrough came when I realized something Thomas didn't know I knew. Isabella wasn't just his new girlfriend. She was also an FBI informant. Turns out, when you're being investigated for financial crimes, the FBI likes to place people close to you. And Isabella, sweet little Isabella with her communications degree and her innocent smile, had been feeding information to federal investigators for months. But here's the thing, she didn't know I knew, and Thomas certainly didn't know. So I did something that still makes me smile when I think about it. I befriended her. I know. Befriend your husband's mistress, but hear me out. I invited Isabella for coffee, told her I wanted to talk, woman to woman, about making this transition as smooth as possible for everyone involved. I played the role of the gracious, mature wife who just wanted everyone to be happy. And Isabella, bless her heart, felt so guilty about the whole situation that she started confiding in me about how overwhelming it was to be with someone so powerful, about how she sometimes felt in over her head with all his business talk, about how she worried that some of the people he worked with seemed a little scary. I listened, I sympathized, and I very carefully guided our conversations toward the information I needed most. By the time our divorce settlement conference rolled around, I had everything I needed. Thomas walked into that room, expecting to dictate terms. He'd done his math, figured out the minimum he could get away with paying me, and prepared his usual speech about how the businesses were struggling and he couldn't afford to be generous. His lawyer started with the standard approach: paint me as vindictive, claim I was trying to destroy him financially, suggest that I should be grateful for whatever settlement he was offering. I let them talk. I nodded at the appropriate moments. I even dabbed my eyes with a tissue once or twice. Then I spoke. "Thomas," I said, very quietly, "I think there might be some confusion about our respective positions here. and I laid out everything. Not everything, everything. I'm not stupid, but enough to make it very clear that I knew about the offshore accounts, the shell companies, the questionable partnerships. I mentioned a few specific dates, a few specific amounts, a few specific names that made him go very pale very quickly. Now, I continued, still speaking in that same quiet, reasonable tone. I think we should discuss what a truly fair settlement would look like. The room went completely silent. Thomas's lawyer started shuffling through papers, like he was looking for something that might help. But we all knew there wasn't anything there that could help. Thomas stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him recalculating everything. All those assumptions about me, about what I knew, about what I was capable of doing. "What do you want?" he asked finally. What did I want? I wanted justice. I wanted recognition. I wanted the world to see that I wasn't the victim in this story. I was the architect of its ending. But what I said was, I want what's fair, Thomas. I want what I've earned. The final settlement gave me 60% of everything. Not just the legitimate businesses, but control of the entire empire. Thomas kept enough to live comfortably, but he would never again have the kind of power he'd wielded for decades. More importantly, the federal investigation that had been circling him for years finally had the evidence it needed to move forward. I didn't have to provide it directly. Isabella had been doing that job beautifully. But the settlement agreement included Thomas's acknowledgement of certain business practices that made the FBI's case much stronger. Thomas married Isabella 6 months after our divorce was final. They had a beautiful wedding in the Hamptons, featured in all the society magazines, the same magazines that had covered our wedding 12 years earlier, with headlines about fairy tale romance. What those magazines didn't cover was that by the time Thomas said "I do" to Isabella, his business empire was already crumbling. The federal investigation became public knowledge 3 months after their wedding. Asset seizures started shortly after that. Isabella filed for divorce 8 months later, citing irreconcilable differences, naturally. And me? I took that empire Thomas built on questionable foundations, and I transformed it into something legitimate, something powerful, something that creates jobs and opportunities, instead of just moving dirty money around. I kept the name Whitmore for business purposes. It still opens doors, but I made it mean something different, something better. The consulting firm I'd been running quietly for years. It's now one of the most successful strategic consulting companies on the East Coast. The relationships I'd built during all those business dinners, where I was supposed to just smile and look pretty, they became partnerships, investments, opportunities. I employ over 300 people now. I mentor young women who are trying to build their own businesses. I use my wealth and influence to support causes that actually matter, not just whatever charity makes for good photo opportunities. Thomas lives in a nice condo in Florida. Now, he's not poor, but he's not powerful anymore. He can't hurt anyone the way he used to be able to. And sometimes, when I'm having a particularly good day, I think that's probably the best possible outcome for everyone involved. But here's what I really want you to understand from all this. I didn't win because I got lucky. I didn't win because I hired better lawyers, or because the system was fair to me. I won because I never stopped being who I was. While Thomas and everyone else saw me as Mrs. Thomas Whitmore, the pretty accessory to his success, I remained Gabrielle, the woman with the MBA from Wharton, the woman who understood business and finance and strategy, the woman who paid attention and planned ahead and never forgot that the only person you can truly count on is yourself. They underestimated me because they wanted to underestimate me, because it was easier to see me as a stereotype than as the complex, intelligent, strategic person I actually am. And I let them, because sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage you can have. If this story inspired you, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with any woman who needs to hear this message. Drop a comment below telling me what you thought about this incredible journey from victim to victor. And remember to subscribe for more stories about women who refuse to stay down. Your support means everything to me, and I'll see you in the next video, where I'll be sharing another story about a woman who turned the tables when everyone counted her out. Until then, remember, never let anyone else define your worth, and never forget that the best revenge is success on your own terms.